Fantastic. Here we go. So you're welcome to begin, and I can comment or intervene as we go forward. We can learn together.
Which one are we hold? Which one are we number 9?
Yeah.
Okay, very nice. Okay, okay. Is there anyone that would like to read out loud in English? I asked last time. It was very difficult to get someone to do it. I think that's a good idea. Anyone who wants to do it? Otherwise, you just have to be okay with my. Okay, we have a volunteer. Yetta Maimon. Thank you very, very much. Please go right ahead and unmute yourself and read it. He, Rabbi Yochanan, said unto them. If you could unmute.
Rabbi Eliezer said, a good eye. Rabbi Yosha said, a good companion. Rabbi Yos said, a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said, foresight. Rabbi Eliezer said, a good heart. Rabban Yochanan said to them, I perfect the words of Elazar ben Arach, for in his words, your words are included. Rabban Yochanan said unto them, go forth and observe which is a evil way which a man should shun. Rabbi Eliezer said, a will eye. Rabbi Yosha said, a will companion. Rabbi Yosh said, a will neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said, one who borrows and do not repay for that borrows from man is as one who borrows from God. Blessed be he, as it is said. The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous deal graciously and give. Rabbi Eliezer said, an evil heart. Yochanan said to them, I perfect the words of Elazar ben Arach. Said, Rabban Yochanan said to them, I prefer the words of Elazar ben Arach, for in his word, your word are included.
Okay, very nice. Thank you so much. If we now go back to the beginning, let's start to dissect this. So it's very interesting. So Amar Lehem, Rabbi Yochanan said to them, Tzeu ula'u ezehi derech yashara, shedibak ba Adam. He said to them, go forth and observe which is the right way to which a man should cleave. Anyone who speaks Hebrew also knows that dibek, that also means glue in modern Hebrew. In other words, which is a way for a man, for a human being, to act and to be consistent with, that will lead him to do what's good. In other words, I would say that I interpret this as saying to stay, to be a good Jew, to be on the right derech, as you say, to be on the derech and do live a life of meaning, a life of developing yourself, and a life of sort of building your character traits. And I find it fascinating that the Rav told them, my Talmudim, my students, I want you to go out and find your own way. Can you imagine having a teacher who said that? By the way, today everyone is going to think about what's the best way for you to be the best version of yourself that you could be. I find it fascinating. It also shows the trust that the rabbi, that a teacher should have in his students, which I just find very, very inspiring, and also very, very, very true. I heard recently that in order to trust someone, you have to show them that you trust them. In other words, trust is built from both ways. If I show you that I put trust in you, you can put trust back into me. And I think this is a very, very nice example of that. So then we have Rabbi Eliezer said, a good eye.
Just before you go forward,
Yeah.
Rav Amster, I first of all want just a comment on two things that you mentioned. The word yidbak is usually something that we use rarely, right? This idea of, as you said, to be stuck to something or glued, but we use it in the terms of dvekut, which is to be connected or to be really. You can say the same, that you're really devoted to God, right? Is someone who who has dvekut. I think we've mentioned many times, and we've seen it throughout Pirkei Avot until this point, that the way that you act as a person and the way that you act in the world is also is not separate and cannot be separated from your relationship to God and your relationship to human. In that sense, that how do you act? He's saying, go out and see what is the proper way. So don't think you can be a proper person when you pray in the morning, but then when you go out just after that and go out into the world, you're not acting properly towards other people. So that's just, I think it's really that word is a very strong word as you put it. The other thing, just to strengthen what you said, is that he tells them go out. In other words, if you stay in my own yeshiva, you're not going to learn.
Very good.
If you want to learn what is your own, first of all, your own individual path, but also if you want to learn the proper way of going straight, that's not going to happen in the yeshiva. That's going to happen only when you go out into the world. So he says, go out and learn. Don't come in and learn. Don't protect yourself and learn all day, and then you have no understanding of how to relate to the world.
Very good. So I just want to continue that point. Ramban Nachmanides said that after you have been in the yeshiva and you learned maybe a new halacha, a new mitzvah, whatever it is, if you then do not try to find a way to put it into action and go out again, go out and try to find how to apply this to the real world, you're not going to be able to really learn it. And I think it's really like I would be so bold to say that this is teaching us a yesod. This is teaching us a foundational principle that really you have to sometimes go out and you have to actively try to find this way. And again, I really I really want us all to sort of, how do you say, listen to this and realize that each and every one of us we have our own unique path within Yiddishkeit, within Judaism, within our tradition. And I also think that's something very important to remember, that even though we have 613 mitzvot, we have 613 commandments that we have to do, and we have this and we have that, at the end of the day, it's also a unique and very personal experience. And I think that's also, I would love for it to be also what he is saying. Okay. If we go weiter, if we continue a little bit onwards, it says Rabbi Eliezer said a good eye, and I have to just share what Rav Hirsch said. A good eye designates an attitude of kindness and goodwill towards all others, toward their concerns, their aspirations, their achievements, and their possessions. In other words, is the way to sort of see your surroundings and see what they need. You see what your peers need, to see what your friends need, to see what other people need. And I think this is also, again, this is, I all I can think of, this is a word you use in some yeshivot. It's a yesoidic thing to say. In other words, it's a rule that we can really apply to ourselves. Start by thinking about other people. Start by thinking about what they are doing, why they're doing it, and why you are so impressed and why you're inspired. Okay, fine. Then Rabbi Yeshua said, Chaver Tov, to have a good friend. Well, that sort of explains itself. Everyone knows how precious it is to have a good friend, to have someone that cares about you, that you care about, and someone very, like to have a good friend, like a gitte chaver. It's a very precious thing. It's something that unfortunately not everyone even has, and it's something that you never could take for granted. And I also think that's what it's saying here. It's saying here that
interesting, yeah. It's just interesting because just to look at the words, because Rabbi Yochanan is saying, go out and observe which is the right way that a man should cleave. And then, okay, so the first one is more understandable because you're saying, I should learn how to look with a good eye. But then how do you say being a good companion? It means that you're demanding from yourself to understand how important that is and to be a good friend to other people, because you can't force that. It can't be forced. You can go to the same club with someone for 50 years, and when you meet each other on the street, you couldn't care less. It's not a true sense of friendship. I once heard one of the rabbis who said very simply, what is a good friend? Someone that you know that when you wake him up at 2 a.m, he will say, what's wrong? How can I help you? And not, why are you bothering me? So it's very simple ideas of just a chaver comes from the word chibur, of connection. If you're connected to someone deeply inside, like a family, then you'll be there for them, as you said. So I'm just focusing on the fact this is something that they're saying, what is the best thing that I can do in order to be a proper mensch in life is to make sure that I'm a good chaver, that I'm a good friend of people.
And this really is something, what you were saying, Rav Moshe David, I also think it's very important that this is something that takes work. This is something that you actively have to work on. Baruch Hashem, a lot of people are giving by nature and caring by nature, but even though we have that, we also have to work on ourselves to come to this point. And I think that itself also, I think it's something very important to emphasize, that you could work on yourself to become a giver, to someone who cares, to someone who genuinely wants to do what's best for others and be there for others. I'll be completely transparent. It's a fantastic thing to be in a position to work as a rabbi in the Moshe the HaCohen. I know you can relate to this, that people want you to help them. They want you to be there for them. They want you to ask advice, and sometimes you really could help them. And it's a tremendous feeling. It's a tremendous thing, and also to see how other people are there for each other, and to see how friendship is something that starts building when you're kids. I could see my own kids that they're starting to have friends that really they're starting to care for each other. Like I see my son, he asks his friend, "Do you need this? Do you need that?" It's a very beautiful thing, and I'll take it even further. I think that's how we learn how Hashem wants us to be. Hashem wants us to be. Hashem created the world, like the Ramchal says, "Kedei lehetiv," in order to give. But that must mean that we also should give. Okay, fine. We continue.
Yeah. I'm just going to reflect back again, from what you're saying. I think there is a tendency that you can relate to, that someone might learn this Mishnah and he says, okay, you know what? I'm gonna have a checklist and I'm gonna do all 5 of these today. But it's not possible. It's about really developing relationship. So it's really demanding of tze'u u're'u, to go out into this world. Because if you don't open yourself up and see the needs of the world, and you're introverted within the Torah world, or within the yeshiva world, or within your own self, or within your own TV, whatever it is, then there's no way to check a list off any of these. I think that's the common thing about all of them, is that you really have to have a relationship. You have to be involved with people and with the world as it is. So I'm just based on what you're saying, I'm going back to this word of tze'u, to go out and to see. Without getting into a complicated discussion, I know that there are some people who are so holy that they don't even pick up their eyes and don't see the people around them when they're outside. But here we're saying tze'u, it doesn't say cover your eyes, it says open them and notice what is around you. How are you going to see the person and what he needs if you're just, not really going out there? One other thing, I'm just still relating to this word tze'u. I know you're going forward, and I keep
no, it's great.
Yeah.
I want to say, I want to add to what you're saying. We continue. This is the problem when you start speaking. You and I don't want to stop because it's fun. So continue.
So, but it's fantastic. I think that there's a very fundamental difference between halakha and what we actually see, both in the Gemara and specifically in the stories of the Gemara, the stories in the Talmud, and the stories in the Zohar as well. because all of those stories are about our sages who are out there. They're out there in the street. They're even in some cases asking, asking the child, what have you learned today? For example, right? You have stories in which the leaders of the generation are walking down in the desert. They see a child, they see a shepherd, and they say to him, tell me what is on your mind, what is on your heart. And that's a very that's a difference even in the word that we have, tashma, to come and listen, to tachazi, to come and see, right? Right, when you're out there, and the Zohar will even take it either further. They're going out and they see a hutaya, they see a Arab shepherd, right, who's walking his sheep, and they have a relation. They just to put it in just, I think, in a nutshell, would be to say that you're walking out and realizing that every second of your day, what you're meeting is what you're supposed, that there's a relationship or something that God is really opening up for you. It's not what do I need to do, what checklist do I need to check off. It's what opportunity do I have to learn from the person now next to me. And it's not only me doing for them, but what can I learn from this from this opportunity.
And that's a very good point, because it's a very good, it helps sort of to make like a big part and like most part of your life into meaningful. Like you can even make a joke that's what it means to be an observant Jew. You observe things, you see what's happening. I'm not like, it's cute, but it's true. You observe and you learn from it, and you really see, and like you are put in situations like Yoim Valayla, day and night, where you can learn from, and like, we shouldn't only think that we could learn from the big people. We can learn from the small people as well. We can learn from everyone. We can learn from the simpleton and from the brightest star. Then
I think people are quite sensitive, because if you're really coming with an open heart when you meet people, that's what Ayin Tova means, I think, more than anything else. Because you can say, oh, I'm an open person, but how does a person feel when you meet them? Do they feel that you're being judgmental about them, or that you're really opening to learning from them? I think, like you said before, if I want to have trust, then I have to trust. If I want to learn to teach someone, I have to learn from them. We say in davening every morning before Shema, we say lishmoa, lilmod, lelamed, that there's a 3-step process, right? First to listen, and then to learn, and then to teach. Many of us, the first thing we want to do, we step into the room, we want to teach. We forget about listening and learning. So saying that also, I just want to invite anyone here who wants to share with us to and with this conversation, then you're very welcome to.
The king of segues. No one does it better than Rav Moshe David. But I agree. Please, if you want to say something, jump right in. Don't be shy. And even if you don't want to say, if you don't know what you're saying, just say it anyway. Then Rabbi Yossi says, you should have a shachen tov, you should have a good neighbor. That one is interesting. I guess that means that like it should be a good neighbor. And I do know that could mean like let's just face it. Sometimes what I do in my apartment, if you live in Israel, live in Sweden, you live in apartments. I guess in Denmark and Malmö and Oslo as well, you live in apartments often. And what I do here bothers my neighbors downstairs and so on and so forth. That I understand. It's a very like if my kids are too wild, my downstairs neighbors comes up and says, "What are you doing?" And it happens. And I tell my kids sometimes to not be so wild. But on the other hand, like if you try to find a way to live together, it becomes much nicer. Like sometimes it could be wild, and sometimes you can come up and tell me, listen, it's a little bit too much right now, and then we'll stop. In other words, I think that's what it means to be a good neighbor. But more so, and this is just from personal experience, because I'm lucky enough to live in a building where we have other Jewish families. And what happens then is the building, this is also Baruch Hashem, this is what it's like in Israel if you live in an apartment. my kids run upstairs to the neighbors and they come down here, and the building becomes part of your day-to-day life. And I really think that's also what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have a relationship, not only with the people you choose to have, but the people you happen to live next to. You're supposed to have a relationship with them. In my building, there's also a lot of different companies that work, and I try to go out of my way to be nice to them, because I generally want them to feel like it's a good thing and it's a nice thing to feel. But if anyone have like a more deep way of understanding this within neighbor, because for me, this is one of the few where it just becomes like it just makes sense. Yeah, you're supposed to have a good neighbor because you want to be respectful to everyone else. Does anyone else have like a more deep understanding of this? Ramosh David, I know you do, but anyone else, if you have, does anyone have a comment on this? Because this one, I don't have like any more to add to this than just a simple reading. Does anyone have anything to add? You don't have to, but if you do, Matoiva Manayim, how beautiful it would be.
Cecilia is smiling. Cecilia, do you have any idea? Just to put you on the spot.
And we don't want to hear examples of bad neighbors.
I'm thinking of all these words about companions, neighbors, foresight, and good heart. This is what we all should try to be all the time, all the time. So it's included in a human being, I think. Should we have that if we open out?
Yes, yes, I know that you try all of your life to do that, Cecilia and Halavai. We should all do that as well. I mean, you talk about learning, you talk about this and that, and in the previous Mishnah we saw, giant sages who never forgot one thing, one drop of wisdom their entire lives. And this Mishnah maybe is saying, okay, well, that's beautiful, but what does it look like in your daily life and relationships? I think that I was actually quite shocked coming to Sweden, because I come from, a very small community, which is like a kibbutz. I can just say that, Friday afternoon, I literally, you don't have 30 seconds that go by without someone knocking on the door. Do you have this? Do you have that? We all are basically cooking Shabbos together, because
we had that in our house too. We have that here, which is beautiful. Sorry, but it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember the one time that, I think it was Friday afternoon. And I said, you know what, we're missing, we would, it was literally like an onion or something. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to go over to the neighbor. This was in a very, a Swedish neighborhood in Malmö, in Limhamn. So I walked over and they couldn't understand, I just walked over and I was just talking to them. And after 5 minutes, I said, do you have an onion? And it like changed their world. 3 weeks later, they were telling me, you know what, maybe you need something else? It's like they never thought that you can have, it's a bit sad because I'm sure that not so far back, it didn't used to look like that. I'm sure in farmlands and people who grew up in farms and you grew up in a more communal sense. But just to relate to what you were saying before about a neighbor, so we had a beautiful visit, a physical visit of Eliyahu Hanavi a few years ago on Seder night, because we were going pretty late. As you can imagine, I think we had 50 or 60 people in our house. And then suddenly I think we're just up to the part of Eliyahu Hanavi. And there's a knock on the door and I go open it up. I'm sure, Eliyahu has showed up, and sure enough, it's my angry neighbor who demands that we stop singing and stop annoying him, and he's going to call the police. So, it's sometimes, as you say, it's challenging because sometimes what I feel is holy comes at the expense of someone else. And maybe that's the point here of Shachen Tov, that, I have to make sure that whatever I'm doing does not come at someone else's expense. I'll tell you just another funny, by my in-laws in Yerushalayim, they live just at the edge of the forest. And one day I was going on a tiul, just on a walk on Shabbat, and I see plastered all over the trees there, if you think that he hears you, we hear you as well. Stop disturbing our sleep. In other words, people were going down and meditating or davening very loudly, right, and yelling out to Hashem, and it was disturbing the neighbors. So they put up signs and said, with all due respect, is it worth stealing our sleep? Stealing someone's sleep is something that can never be given back. It's like real stealing.
It's called gazel shena. To steal someone's sleep is a real thing, but it's also very cute because it also shows the size of the Jerusalem forests. In Sweden, you can get lost in a forest, and in Jerusalem, I lived close to Yar Yerushalayim in my first yeshiva, and I used to go there every Friday early afternoon too, and you felt like there was no one else there. And then I realized one time I had been standing behind someone's house. I had no idea. I thought I was deep in the forest. But yeah, Daniel has a question or a comment.
Yes, I'm thinking about being kind or treating a neighbor. It reminds me of treating the next as you would yourself would like to be treated. To ask your neighbor or have a good eye for your surroundings, as you would yourself appreciate if others would care for you. So in that sense, we're creating an environment that a pleasant environment to be in, instead of having a distance and isolating ourselves. We're creating a pleasant, open environment. And I think also, speaking of like conflicts or of distance, often when we have the possibility of speaking, we come closer to each other and can create more peace instead of letting a conflict stay. Rabbi Moshe David, an example of you when you're going around with the Imam of Malmo, for example.
I'm also involved sometimes. I did it.
Sorry.
I'm kidding. I was lucky enough to be part of it. It was a beautiful experience. Moshe David does a tremendous job with it. No, I agree with it.
It's actually been, I'm going to let you go weiter, but it's actually, I do want to mention, because Daniel mentioned it, that it's very disturbing talking about good neighbors, because is a good neighbor only someone who just like you, right? And unfortunately, there is a tendency to, especially in Sweden, we have these very strong rental, society or clubs or whatever you want to call them in English. There was just an article in Sydsvenskan 2 weeks ago that there was a Muslim organization who works on anti-extremism and works for integration, and they have not been able to find a rental anywhere in central Malmo. It's in other words, I think it also teaches us about stepping out of maybe sometimes our comfort zone, even because it's easier just to shut the door and not to be a good neighbor. So there's a lot to think about in terms of relationships.
So now that you said it, made me think about something, and I'll share this story because I think maybe you could learn from it, and I think I did the right thing. So on Sukkot, as you know, we have a mitzvah of building a sukkah. You have to dwell in a sukkah, to live in a sukkah, to eat your meals in a sukkah. I have a beautiful courtyard in my building, but the owner of this building won't let us build a sukkah there. Okay, I have tried many different ways of getting her to let us do it, but she is, as of now, impossible. So then you have to think to yourself, okay, how do I build a sukkah? If I'm not allowed to build in my courtyard, where am I going to build it? I can't build it on the roof as you could do in Jerusalem, because the roofs here are not flat. So what do? So I rented a trailer, okay? I rented a släpvagn, as you say in Swedish, and I built a sukkah on that. And I did it on my street. I've shared this before here, but I'll share it again, because there's a point to it. And Baruch Hashem, every year I found a bigger trailer. So I got from like the first time I said Kiddush in it, like everyone sat down, and I tried to stand up, I could barely sit down, to now almost being able to stand up without it being such a problem. But this creates a lot of attention. And I don't like it. I don't like that people are looking at it. But what happened is, as a rule, it has become a beautiful thing. People look at it, and when I see someone looking at it, I ask them, "Oh, you must wonder what this is." And I asked, there was a bunch of, I live in Östermalm, which is a very posh neighborhood in Stockholm, and you have a lot of like Östermalm ladies here, right? They're upper class. That's the only way to put it. And I asked them, and they were like in their 70s, and I asked them, like, you wonder what this is? And they said, yeah. And I said, I'll tell you. Did you ever have, did you ever learn about religion in school? Religionskunskap, as you say in Swedish. I said, yeah, of course. I said, did you ever hear about the Leaf Hut Festival? And they said, yeah. We learned it. We learned it in the Old Testament. And I said, were you looking at a leaf hut? And they said, you still celebrate it? And I said, yeah, we still celebrate it. And then they asked me, are you a rabbi? I said, yes, I happen to be a rabbi. And then they asked me, could I take a picture of you? Because I've never seen one. But what I'm trying to get to is, first they thought, what's wrong here? They have like the family goes in to this trailer and they have like a roof made of, what's it called, of reeds, and something is clearly wrong. But then when I spoke to them and they saw, hopefully, that I was normal, they realized, okay, this is something that is a tradition for this family. It's different than us, but I feel that we might have gotten closer here. And maybe that's also what it's supposed to be, that you could show people like this is, and believe me, for my non-Jewish neighbors, we're very different. But I'm trying very hard to, if someone asks something, I explain it, and I try to like sort of like even invite them to see, like if they have, anyhow. So now should we continue onwards with this? And I hope you should all pray the next year we get to build our sukkah in the courtyard, because it's much nicer.
If not, I'm going to suggest that I'm going to already offer. We have a husvan that is parked down. It probably has a bit more room than one you're describing. You're very welcome to take off the roof for a week and
Really?
park it outside. Yes.
Okay. You should be careful. You should be careful.
It's waiting for you. It's waiting for you, Rav Amster.
But it's happening.
It's recorded. This is recorded.
Rosh Chodesh Nisan. We already have miracles.
Fantastic.
It's fantastic. Very nice. Then you can even sleep in it, but you're not allowed to sleep in it. By the way, just so you know, before you get shocked, the rabbi of Stockholm looked it up. I spoke to the police. I had permission. It was allowed what I was doing, but I was not allowed to sleep in it. Okay. But I'm allowed to eat in it. It was perfectly legal. The police came one time last year, and social service came that year too, but everything was fine. They thought we were living in the trailer. Okay, so Rabbi Shimon said, and it's interesting here, it says, Rabbi Shimon says, have foresight. And in the translation, I just want to read that I have from Rav Hirsch, it says, one who considers the consequences. I guess it's very similar. If you have foresight, that means that you think ahead, thinking, if I do this, it could lead to this and this and this. And the one who considers the consequences, I think that's interesting. In a way, that's like living your life. And this is something for me it's something I constantly think about. As an observant Jew, are you sort of allowed to lose yourself in the moment? And I have to say that I don't think you really are. I think you always have to have that feeling of thinking, when I do this, what is the consequences? That doesn't mean you should be paranoid, God forbid, but to always think, like, if I do this, what is going to be the consequences? If I talk like this to my wife, to my kids, to my friend, what's the consequence of it? And I think that's a way that we really are supposed to conduct ourselves, that we constantly think what the consequences are. But not but for me, it's a fine line to when people become almost obsessed with this. Do people understand what I'm trying to get to? Because this is a constant like struggle almost. I think we have a tendency that we want to lose ourselves in a moment. We just want to sort of like tap out, but maybe we can't, except for Purim.
Is that connected to a relationship? Because everything else we see here is.
So in a much bigger and broader way, in a relationship, yes, because the way I'll give you like a very practical example. Like, let's say that you're stressed out and your kids doesn't want to go to school. That could happen to parents. It happened to me, not this morning, Baruch Hashem, but it happens. Then I have the choice. If I get stressed out and I start saying, like, and start also acting on that frustration, it's going to lead to consequences. It's going to lead to my kids like feeling further away from me. It's going to lead to us not feeling as close. It's going to lead to like just a continuation. And I think maybe this is and this is, but I think this is what it's talking about. But for me, it seems like it's talking about an already established relationship. Like all the other ones could be established and also a new relationship, I think. Here, a new relationship, I don't really connect it, but that could be my lacking of understanding. But do you understand where I'm getting with that? It's like it takes a slight turn here.
Yeah, I think it also in a way connects to the sense of where do I put my foot down and what is so important for me that I'm not willing to give up on it. It has to do with all relationships, also the neighbor, because where will this, what is the best case scenario and where will this end up? And what should I be preaching and what should I be teaching and what should I be silent about as well? Connects, at least for me, to this, because we want to have long-lasting relationships. We want to have long-lasting students and rabbis, and it all comes to, yes, this might be the most important thing for me. It might be insulting for me, it might be hurtful to me, but what is the best case scenario in the long run? I think is one way to, just coming from what you're saying, is one way to understand this.
Yeah, I hear. And also, yeah, that is true, and that's true. And also, like one has to always think, if I do say this, and this again, this working as a rabbi, this is something you have to think about. If I say that this is the halacha that we should be following, if I say that this is not kosher and so on and so forth, it has consequences, and you always have to think ahead. That's true. Foresight is a very important thing. But I guess that they all have in common, though, that you have to like really like make a cheshbon. You really have to like sort of, how would you translate cheshbon? You have to like calculate and think about what the consequences are going to be. I very much hear that.
I'm wondering now, just hearing you, I'm wondering if each of these sages is saying it after each other, or is this what they're saying? Are they all stepping into the room, one after another? They've been asked the question, they've gone out for a year, 2 years, 5 years into the world. They come back to the rabbi. Are they discussing between them and one is answering that he thinks differently? Or is each answering what they have actually found? I think it's I don't know if we're going to have the answer to that question, but it's fascinating.
I'll just say one thing. When the answer comes, Amar lehem re'ani es divrei Eliezer ben Arach med divreichem, that's the mashma'ut of that. It's like what you could like sort of deduce from that is a little bit that after Rabbi Yochanan had heard all of them, this is what it shows, because but I have been learning it, and I realized that we've been learning it like you're saying. We've sort of been building on one after the other and then applying back to it. If nothing else, I guess that's the beauty of Torah scholars, that they could sort of, in their foresight, think, okay, fine. So Rabbi Elazar said, a good heart, I get the heart, to have a good heart. And again, that makes sense from various reasons, because we sort of connected to people who are warm, friendly, and caring, and all of those sort of very good attributes. We connect to someone who has a good heart, and well, it's very obvious that Rabbi Yochanan, right? Rabbi Yochanan is also agreeing with that. That's all. It's an all-encompassing attribute that someone has. Okay, and then let's see, what time is it? Wow, time flies when you get to speak. Where are we? Rabbi Yochanan said to them, "I prefer the words. For in his words, your words are included." So in other words, I guess, because the heart really represents all of the good things, but also like the heart also represents sort of the physical part of you. So if you have gone to a place where your physical you and your spiritual you are sort of going hand in hand and working together, that also like encompasses everything. That's also part of the struggles. If you have a good heart, that means you really worked on your spiritual side. So the spiritual side sort of affects the more physical side. That would be my continuous interpretation of it. Okay, Rabban Yochanan said to them, no, sorry. He Rabban unto them, if you continue, go forth and observe which is the evil way which man should shun. So this is even more astounding. Like this is absolutely, this is almost shocking. He's telling them it's the same, it's the same word. Go out and observe what is the evil, bad ways of living. And very often we see that sometimes we're very scared of seeing things that could be negative. We don't want to be affected by it. We actually rather like block it out so we don't have to see it. And this is actually incredible. I don't know who is on such a level that you could do this. Like Moshe David, do you understand what I'm saying? Like to go out and see the evil ways. For me, I have to admit, it's a little bit wow. Obviously,
first of all, if you're following the previous advice of Lev Tov and Ein Tovah, then how do you actually see any evil? Is a question in itself, right? Because he's sending them out again, as you said, and they've already been told to look at everything good, and now he's saying just look at the bad way. But also, we don't see in any of the answers, they don't jump to something that would be very easy for us to jump to. Don't drink, don't abuse, don't hit, don't, be careful of what you say. But they're talking about the inner tendencies of how you're going out. Because I think, especially with evil, it's very easy to jump to what has this person done evil. We know that from all of the headlines or from courts and from trials, and you don't get into the inner sense of what has led the person to do that. And that's what he's suggesting, I think, that they try to understand. But as you're saying, I think it is incredible because he's sending them to the pubs right now, and maybe even to even lower places than the pubs, to learn. Go talk to every drunk person in town and learn what got them to get there. Which is, we have Hasidic stories like this, right, in which people, the Rebbes end up in the pubs and in the, I was in Vienna last Shabbat, and I ended during the time of Suda Shlishit. I somehow ended up walking down the street and ending up in a pub that was established in 1500 and has been there since. And you can just imagine how many drunkards have gone. And I have to tell you, I really felt I was living this Mishna. Like, how do people end up here in this, really a hole in the ground that you can imagine? For me, it was next to this huge church, and I was just imagining also the anti-Semitism and the Jewish experience around that. But it was actually difficult. But yes, how do people end up in these places? And how do we allow ourselves really to go there? But go ahead, Weiter.
But it's then what's even more incredible is that their conclusion is it's going to be the exact opposite of the good of the good one. What's the good thing? To have a good eye. So what was going to be the bad thing? Well, an evil eye. And then we could continue: a good companion, an evil companion, a good neighbor, an evil neighbor. But again, an evil eye. Let's go again with Rabbi Hirsch's interpretation and understanding of a good eye. Then you see for the good of people and see what their needs, what they're trying to accomplish, what kind of person this is. If it's an evil eye, it's negativity. In negativity, when someone starts talking negative with a person, unfortunately, there's something incredible about Lashon Hara. And because it's, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and I might think that this is true. when you say something negative with a person and another person say, yeah, I know he's so like this and this and this, at that moment, you falsely feel close to each other. The people talking Lashon Hara, when they say that, they falsely feel close to each other because they agree upon something about another person, but it's false. It's only leading to separation. It's not leading to closeness, but it's almost incredible to think about it, that we want to feel close to people. So we would even take it so far that by saying something that's clearly negative about a person, in that moment you feel closer to each other. But it doesn't lead to anything good. And I think this might be what it's saying here, negativity. It's very easy to get to. We have it, unfortunately, we have it like that. We have a Yetzer Hara, we have an evil inclination to be able to go to that part of us. We all have it in us. It's a fight we have every single day. And if you don't have it, well, then you have other problems. What I'm trying to get to, this is part of the human experience, that it's easy to see the negative things. And there's famous Gemara about Rabbi Akiva. You know, before he was Rabbi Akiva, he was working for Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. And Erev Yom Kippur, he said, okay, I'm done with everything I've done. Where is my money? You have to pay me. And Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, who happened to be one of the richest Jews of that generation, said, I don't have any money. So then Rabbi Akiva had the option of saying, oh, this is a bad person, and then Rabbi Akiva found reasons why he didn't have any money. And the reasons are almost outrageous, but again, Rabbi Akiva was the kind of person that forced himself to try to understand why people are acting that way, and that it doesn't always have to be something negative. So I guess that's what would be my interpretation here, that negativity is like a fire that spreads, and it could take over communities, it could take over families, and people could thrive on negativity. Unfortunately, it's a very easy trap to fall into.
Yeah, I think also that, you know, it's obvious probably to everyone here that the world that we live in, hopefully it's obvious, and the feeds that we feed from are creating polarization, which is making it much more challenging for us to see the other side. We did have a question here that was set in Hebrew by Arad, who is very concerned about the situation right now in Israel, and he says, you know, what's going on? Where is this Pirkei Avot in the Israeli society when you have, you know, people who are rabbis and are from the religious world who are leading some of these, you know, this huge split with and the way that people are acting towards one another. All I can say, and I say this with my true heart, that there's a lot of good things going on, and that, right, unfortunately, when you are far, you feed off of media, and many people, even in Israel, are just feeding off of media, feeding off. And I met this group of leading intellectuals in Israel from the left wing side, and we had a meeting. They came forward, and they came to us, and they were so distressed and depressed. But then I realized very simply they were just so depressed because they were sitting in their own living rooms and feeding off. I think everyone's in Israel also is feeding off of negativity, and also it creates a sense of if it's so bad, I have to protect myself, and everyone is trying to protect themselves more. It's become so to the point in which you say one word. I actually wrote something on Facebook. It was just a few days ago. My rabbi, blessed memory, Rabbi Menachem Fruman, it was his yortzeit, his 10th yortzeit, and all I wrote on the Facebook post, I wrote, maybe in the spirit of our rabbi, we can remember that right and left are part of one body and one soul. That's what I wrote. That was like one sentence, and you cannot imagine the reactions that I got, personal to me, saying, how can you claim that we're one body when this is the way they act towards me? And it took a lot of mediation and trust building in order to get across a different message. And in the end, I realized I had to write something longer than that. And I checked with this person. I said, now are you okay with it? Because this is what I meant. And he said, thank you. So to have an open heart as we learned before, is the most important, and I think it's the most difficult right now. Difficult for many, many people. But as I said, Arad, I don't want you to be depressed, because there's a lot of beautiful things happening. Many, many meetings at many different levels in Israel. There's a tent set outside of the Supreme Court every single day, and all people do is gather there to remember that we are one nation. They don't want to have any political discussions. They just want to remind everyone we are one. And there's many good initiatives going on. I was invited to speak outside the Knesset about a month ago by the left wing, saying, we're looking for another voice. Can you just come? And I said, I can come, but all I'm going to do is daven. And that's what I did. So there's a lot of good initiatives, and hopefully, first of all, we can just help each other try to keep our hearts open. It's very difficult, I think. And whenever someone goes into this clash mode, which is almost all the time now, just to help people, calm down and remember that beyond everything, as we said before, what is the best outcome of this? The best outcome is that we remember that we're one nation. You see the whole world, including the Nordic countries, everyone is in shock. This tiny country has some, issues, and the whole world goes crazy. From the United States to Jordan to Saudi Arabia to Iran, everyone is mentioning, and the Nordic countries, all of Europe, because some people are not getting along. It just shows us how Yerushalayim is really the center of Shalom, is really keeping the world together. And everyone feels that their glue is really falling apart. So I hope that from that sense, and one more thing, because I think it's important to speak about this. One more thing I'll say is that people really care. And when you have that amount of people out on the streets right now in Israel, they care. And when you have another 50% of the country, you feel that they've been pushed aside for many years, they care. But what both sides are missing right now is that the good heart, the open heart, and to bring it all together. Because if people were just in the Knesset were to say to one another, you know what? I just want to listen to you. But, I'll tell you, Mattias, I don't know if you'll believe me, but a friend of mine was in the Knesset last week, and they were all, shouting like this and this in the Knesset. They all went out, you won't believe this, put their phones aside and had coffee together from both sides.
No, I believe it.
I mean,
I'll say like, and also for me, like, Baruch Hashem, I spent 9 years living in Israel, and you also realize then that even before that, we, as a family and as me, I went to Israel all the time. But when you live there, you see real Israel, and I can not understand as well as you could, because Baruch Hashem, you're from there for real. But I'm trying to get to, if you only look at what the media tells you to see, you will only see one part of the picture. Right now, it's too much, and exactly what you're saying, all different sides are pointing to the other one and saying you are not this and this. But at the end of the day, when you are in Israel, you see the more real side of it, and you see that it's a more complicated in a good way situation, and like you could really see. But in Meretz Hashem, this should be bothering us, because that's a good thing that's bothering us. It should hurt. It's not nice to see Jews being out, not being able to live in shalom. But the davening part is not such a bad idea either, to give extra koichot, to give extra strength to it. But yeah, I believe it. I believe they had a coffee together. I very much believe so.
I mean, that's what it is. Just go out and open your eyes, right?
Yeah,
It goes back to,
it's true.
And it's happening, and there's many good things. I would say there was a beautiful event in Yerushalayim with just singing together. It's many good things happening. Unfortunately, they're not covered by the media because it doesn't fit their algorithms. So, but there's many good things going on, and I hope you believe it. And at least for now, and I really, really hope and pray it won't change. Families are families, and when you have Seder, you're going to have big Seders with the families as they are in Israel, and you can have people from both sides, who are married with one another, coming together and having Seder and having Yom HaZikaron and having Yom HaTzmaut all together. I really, some people are even suggesting that's not even going to be possible. but I really don't believe that. I really hope that these things are beyond everything else, that people are going to come together beyond everything else. I mean, we had it enough with Seder with Corona, with COVID. I think people should be together and families will come together. I can say within my own family, everything is as diverse as can be. You cannot imagine a more diverse from right to left to, literally. But we had a brit milah for my nephew, so we were all there. It's no question. And Seder night we'll be together. So these things will hopefully keep the glue together and keep the heart open.
Amen. So nice to speak to everyone. And Rav Moshe David, it's always a pleasure to learn together. Thank you, everyone.
So thank you. We didn't get through the last part. Maybe just we have the last lines here.
Okay.
So maybe just for the just finish the Mishnah in 1 minute.
Fine. So Rabbi Shimon said, one who borrows and does not repay for that he borrows from a man is one who borrows from God, blessed be he. As it said, the wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous deal graciously and give. In order to give. Rabbi Elazar said, an evil heart. He, Rabbi Yochanan, said to them, I prefer the words of Elazar ben Arach, for in his words, your words are included. Again, back to the heart, to a lev tov. To have, if you have a lev tov, that's all inclusive. If a lev ra, it's more difficult for you to change. But you could never give up. But wow, what a Mishnah. What a Mishnah. There's a reason we have Pirkei Avot.
I agree 100%. I wish everyone would just be learning this Mishnah tonight. I think it would make a huge, change. Just stop everything, stop the arguments, just learn this Mishnah, and that in itself will just be the solution. I'm sure if everyone did that, we would have a solution tomorrow morning for all of our.
Ain't shum safek. It's not, if everyone doing it really did it, it's almost scary what would happen. In a good way.
So thank you, Mattias, for your heart and for your wisdom and for being with us tonight. I think there's a technical question here, but we're going to let anyone who needs to go, can go. So thank you, everyone, for joining. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, don't forget, it's Nissan, start cleaning for Pesach. And if I don't see you before, Pesach, kasher, v'sameach to everyone. Have a beautiful, meaningful Pesach and kosher Pesach. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will have another shiur next week, and then after that we'll be on a break for Pesach. So see you, everyone. Bezrat Hashem. Thank you, Rav Mattias. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Call to everyone.
Laila tov.
Laila tov.